Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up. I did do a mid-month wrap-up this month and I talked about 9 different books in that wrap-up, and today I have 13 more to talk about, so I'm just quickly going to tell you the titles and the star rating of the 9 that I talked about in my previous video, and that way you can go check those out if you want to. And then I'll get into the books that I read the second half of the month. So I read Queenie, which was 4 stars. I read Stay With Me, which was 3 stars. The Beautiful, which was 3 stars. The Damned, which was 3.5 stars. Lover Unleashed, 5 stars. You Must Not Miss, 2.5 stars. Seventh Grave and Nobody, 3.5 stars. Grown, 3 stars. And Wayward Son, 4 stars. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get into the rest of the books that I read the second half of the month. So the first book I'm gonna talk about is How to Catch a Queen by Alyssa Cole. This is a romance and I gave it 2.5 stars. So this is my 3rd or 4th Alyssa Cole romance, and I have just decided that Alyssa Cole romances are not for me. I just don't like them well enough to continue reading them when there's so many others that I could read. I don't hate them, I just don't like her writing, I guess. But this book was about a prince who had to find a wife, and so it was kind of like an arranged marriage. They didn't really talk to each other, and that was just kind of how their culture was, how they ran things in the palace, I guess, is that the king and the queen really didn't talk to each other. So I just didn't like this book. It wasn't horrible, but it just wasn't for me. I did like a few things. I liked that Sanyu, who was the male love interest, the prince, he did change some things in the palace and just in general for like his country that allowed women's voices to be heard more. Women were very be seen and not heard type culture that they had, and he did take steps to change that, and I did really like that. I also liked that Shanti, who is the female love interest, she did not stand down from her beliefs and what she thought should happen and how she thought she should be treated, and I really liked that aspect as well. But mainly it seemed like this book was more about palace politics than the actual romance. And when we did hear about the romance, we heard about the romance, if that makes sense. We would read about their time together as if it was in the past instead of living that time together with them in the book, and I didn't like that. I mean, sometimes that's fine, but that's pretty much the majority of what the romance aspect was. We got some scenes where we were with them at the time that they were spending time together, but most of it was like them thinking about or talking about their time together in the past, and I just really didn't like it. So yeah. Next, I read Ninja at First Sight by Penny Reed. This is a romance as well. This is the novella in the Knitting in the City series, and I gave this one 3 stars. I thought this one was cute, but it's forgettable, and I understand the purpose of the novella because there is a novel that's dedicated to this couple, Fiona and Greg. In the actual series, it's a full-size novel. And so I understand the purpose of the novella, and it's not that I disliked it, it just wasn't, you know, all that to write home about. It's just kind of average. But this is about Fiona and Greg. It's set in 1997, and Fiona is a girl who was training to be in the Olympics, to be a swimmer, and she got cancer and had to quit. And Greg is an ex-Marine, and they meet in college. Greg is 23, Fiona is 18. So I normally like romances that are all in from the beginning, if you know what I mean, where the guy or the girl meets the other one and they know right off the bat, like, this is the one for me, I'm all in. Not necessarily insta love, because it's not insta love, but they just know. They're like, okay, you know, take the time you need, do what you need to do, but I'm all in. I usually really like that, but only when the two love interests are on the same playing field. And to me, 18 and 23 in this instance is not, because she's very naive. She doesn't have a lot of life experience. She's naive when it comes to dating and sexual encounters and things like that. And Greg is not. Greg is an ex-Marine. He's 23 years old. He's had a lot of life experience. He's a senior in college. She's a freshman. I just felt like they weren't on the same playing field. So for him to be like, all in, I'm going to marry you, this is it, felt to me that it could have been a little advantageous. It didn't leave me with like a bad taste in my mouth or anything like that, and I didn't feel like he did anything wrong. Something was a little off with me about it, so that's why I didn't give it any higher than 3 stars. That's kind of where I stand on this one. The next book I read was An American Marriage from Tayari Jones. This one I gave 4.5 stars. This is literary fiction. I loved this book. I truly did. I loved every single character in this book, and that almost never happens for me. So that kind of says a lot. And this is a story that's going to stick with me for a very long time. This is about a husband and wife, and the husband is sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit. And this is about their time with him in prison, how he survives prison, how she survives on the outside without her husband, and then when he gets out of prison, how are they going to move forward with each other or without each other? There were some choices and thoughts that Roy, the main guy, the guy who was sent to prison unjustly, there were some things that he thought and said that I really did not like. And that's why I docked a 0.5 star. But I understand to an extent why the author took the character to those places, because prison changes you. I understand that. I see why his thoughts and choices became darker, but that doesn't excuse them. It doesn't make them okay, you know? So this is not a happy story by any means. It's very sad, it's heartbreaking, but it had a very realistic ending, and I really liked that. It wasn't this happily ever after ending. And so I appreciated that. I just think this is a book that a lot of people should read. I feel like it's underhyped. Not many people talk about it, but I think it's important. Next, I tried to read When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. I DNF'd it. This is a thriller. I thought to myself, maybe that it was just Alyssa Cole romances that I didn't get along with, but I DNF'd this book at like 16%. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. So Alyssa Cole is not for me, and I need to accept that and move on. Next, I read 8th Grade After Dark from Dorinda Cole. I gave this one 4 stars. This is a fantasy romance. I talked about this series in my mid-month wrap-up, so I'm not really gonna go into what it's about, but I did really enjoy this book as well. The last chapter in the book was from Rhea's perspective, which we've never had before. It's always been from Charlie's perspective. So I really liked that. I thought that that was interesting, and I was hoping that going forward there would be more chapters from Rhea's perspective. But the way that this book ended could go one of 2 ways. I could really like how the series continues, or it could ruin it for me. So I was really interested to see what was gonna happen in the next book, so I did go ahead and read that one. And that one was called The Dirt on Ninth Grave. I gave that one 4 stars as well, and I did really enjoy it. We did not get any more chapters from Rhea's perspective, so I was a little disappointed in that, but not much. And I laughed out loud so many times. while reading this book, literally so many times. So I absolutely adore this series. I cannot wait to read the next one. All right, the next book I read was Winter from Marissa Meyer. I gave this one 4 stars. This is a fantasy sci-fi. I've talked about this series multiple times, so I'm not gonna go into what it's about, but I did enjoy the ending of the series. I thought it ended well, but I can't decide if I think this book should have been cut in half and made into 2 different books. It's about 820 something pages long, and not that I don't appreciate long books, it's not that, it's just this one didn't feel right. And so I don't know if she should have split it into 2 different books or if she should have cut some of the parts out and made it smaller, because there was a lot of things that kind of went wrong, you know what I mean, that were obstacles that they had to overcome. And I feel like some of them could have been taken out to make the book a little bit shorter and make it not kind of drag on some. But overall, I really liked the ending of the series. I gave this one 4 stars, so it's not like I gave it a bad rating or anything like that. But this one was probably my least favorite of the ones that I had read so far. I did then read Stars Above by Marissa Meyer as well. This one I gave 3 stars, and I was very disappointed in it. I probably should have given it lower than that, but there were 2, this is a short story collection that comes after Winter. This is technically the last one in the Lunar Chronicles. It's a short story collection, and there were 2 stories that I did like, The Queen's Army and Something Old, Something New. Something Old, Something New was the one story that was about the future. All the others were about the past, and I just wasn't interested. There was one in here that was about a character that was never in any of the other books, none of them. So why was that necessary? Why was there a short story put into the short story collection about a character that we don't know? Why would you introduce a character in a short story when the series is over? I found it very bizarre, and I didn't like it. And so I'm disappointed in this. I kind of wish I had not read it. I almost wish I would have just read the last short story that was about the future and just skipped the rest of them. So it's kind of upsetting to me because this did leave a bit of a bad taste in my mouth about the series, because it was the last book that I read. It was my last impression, so to speak, of the story, and so I was pretty disappointed in that. Next, I read To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi. I gave this one 4 stars. This is my first proper space opera that I read, and I was so pleasantly surprised by it. I really enjoyed this book. I found it so interesting, fascinating. It was just cool. Just the things that she was talking about, the different planets and aliens they encountered. I just thought it was super cool. So I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like if you like sci-fi, if you like space, if you like anything like that, I think you would really enjoy this short little novella. Next, I read I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I gave this one 3 stars. This is a horror. This book did not impact me as much as it has others, at least from what I've read in reviews, but I still enjoyed it. I still liked my time listening to the audiobook, but it just was just kind of, middle of the road for me. Robert was really unlikable, understandably so. I understand why Robert was unlikable, obviously his circumstances, but it made it hard for me to kind of root for him. Obviously I couldn't relate to him at all, so that's probably a large part of why this book was just middle of the road for me. And also I found the ending very underwhelming. I was pretty disappointed in the ending. Next, I tried to read Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the name, but I DNF'd this. This book was just terrible. I don't have anything good to say about this book at all. It was way too wordy, for one, and the author used words that 75% of people are not going to know the meaning of just to sound pretentious. And I felt like the writing was trying to make you feel dumb. I did not appreciate anything about this book. It infuriated me, the writing style, because it truly made me believe that the author was trying to make you feel stupid. And I hated it. It was boring. It was so boring. And there was 1 minute where a couple of the characters seemed a little sketchy, because this is supposed to be a thriller, seemed a little sketchy. And so I thought maybe this could be starting to go in the direction of, you know, the thriller aspects and become more interesting. And then they just weren't anymore. And the way that the characters then started being written, none of them seemed to be doing anything wrong. It just, I DNF'd it at 50%. And I obviously don't know how it ended, but I couldn't stand this book. I absolutely could not stand it. And because I hated it so much, I will never read another book by this author. Next, I read The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. I gave this 3 stars, but I found it really hard to rate because the information was fascinating. I learned a lot, but I did not enjoy my time reading it, unfortunately. That's not to say it's not a good book, because it made me feel a lot of things. It made me so angry. It made me so angry at the lack of respect humans give trees, plants, the earth in general. And I was just so taken aback by the damage that humans are causing trees, specifically, obviously, because this book is about trees. And people just have total disregard for it. They don't care. Like soil is so important, and nobody realizes that. Like, do we not realize that without soil, trees can't grow? And without trees, there's no oxygen. And with no oxygen, there's no life outside of the ocean. Like, do we not understand that? Do we not understand that cutting down all these trees or harming these trees to the point that they're eventually going to die? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing in this life? Why are we treating other living beings with such disrespect? It's so frustrating to me. I also, like, there was a couple other just fun, interesting things that I found out. There were so many things in this book, obviously. There's just a couple that I found to be super interesting. One was that the oldest tree ever, like, recorded was over 9,500 years old. 9,500. And we're out here treating them like they don't matter. Get out of here. The other thing that I thought was super cool was that trees don't produce oxygen at night. They sleep at night when it's dark, and they only produce oxygen during the daylight hours. How cool is that? I had no idea. But I think this really is an important read. I think a lot of people should read it. I would still recommend it, even though I only gave it 3 stars and I didn't necessarily enjoy my time reading it, because it's so important, and I feel like people need to understand the damage we're causing by being irresponsible. And the last book that I read in the month of February was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a mystery as well, and I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this book. I enjoyed my time reading it so much. I had the best time. It's about this girl who inherits this fortune from this man that she doesn't know. And so it's a mystery about why she inherited his fortune, pretty much, and his family, and the things that kind of go on within that family dynamic. And I loved this book. I loved it. I personally, for anybody who has read it, I'm Team Grayson, so I'll just put that out there. But I cannot wait until the next book comes out. So that is all the books that I read in February. If you read any of these, please let me know. Please let me know how you feel about them. Let me know if you're gonna read any of them. Let me know your favorite book that you read in February. Whatever you want to tell me, just tell me, because I love to chat with you guys. So that is everything for me today, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.